Hi, I'm Zachary Brunn, and I'm here with Dominic Cardy, leader of the Canadian Future Party. And could you present yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hey, I'm Dominic, and as you mentioned, I'm now leader of the Canadian Future Party, a new startup party trying to bring evidence and a bit of strong support for democracy back to our federal politics and talk about how we can engage people face to face in politics. Happy to talk about that. But my background before that, I was a member of the provincial legislature for 6 years and a cabinet minister for 4 years, served as Minister for Education and Early Childhood Development. And before that, I worked around the world helping to try and promote and defend democracy. And that's been my obsession since I was a young man. I think that we've got to get people out to defend the system that we have. It's not perfect, but beats the alternatives. And unless normal folks like me, like you, get out and defend it, we're going to lose it. And we're seeing that with the wave of craziness sweeping our politics right now. I saw that starting when I was living in Asia and Africa 15, 20 years ago. I wanted to come back because I don't want to see what I've seen in too many places happen to my home province, my home country.
Yeah. Also, why did you start the Canadian Future Party, or when did it sprout? Did the seeds get planted?
So for me, I've always been someone who's had a real problem with people who are extremists. Really, I always think that extremism and emotion in politics are a nice replacement for actually getting anything done. A good way of distracting people from the real things that matter, which are you can yell all you want about policy inside schools. You don't have any school buildings, or the walls are leaking, or the kids can't learn because the classrooms are disruptive. None of that stuff matters. So I've always taken a very step-by-step approach to politics, an evidence-based approach that look at the core issue you're trying to address and then work back from that. And when I was finishing up my time as a provincial politician, I was working with some people across the country who were trying to bring some evidence-based politics back to national politics. Because with Mr. Trudeau, then Prime Minister, and Mr. Poilievre, it just felt like two guys who were just going at each other all the time and had forgotten why they were there. When Mr. Trudeau stepped down and was replaced by Mr. Carney, one of the original reasons for my new party being founded, it disappeared. Because one of our goals was to have a grown-up party with grown-up ideas. And Mr. Carney, whether you like him or not, is a grown-up, is someone who has a huge amount of experience managing large organizations, as someone who has some weight to him. But at the same time, you look at the way that politics is going around the world. Mr. Carney, clearly, totally comfortable in the company of people like Keir Starmer in the UK, Monsieur Macron in France, Mr. Merz in Germany. Canada is now part of the sort of normal democratic world again, where under Mr. Trudeau for a while, it was more like we had a rock star as prime minister than a politician. Some people like that. I think it cost us a lot in terms of credibility, and we lost a lot of time in getting things we really had some opportunities to get things done the last 2 years that we kind of dropped. But anyway, that's politics and that's democracy. Mr. Carney's doing his best in some of those files to fix some of those issues. In the last election, he didn't talk about defense, for example. Neither did Mr. Poilievre. My little startup party did, and I'm really pleased that now pretty much all the things we campaigned on in 2025 are all now government policy. Getting defense expenditure up to 5%, taking new technologies like drones seriously. But there are other areas where, and the reason why I think this party is still important, the new party, is we're not seeing a level of understanding of how completely changed the world is going to be in a couple of years' time. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's one of the only groups that's not showing a huge amount of support for Mr. Carney is young people, because they're looking and going, okay, what's happening with AI? This is not just about some new technology like a fax machine or the internet. This is going to and is already destroying jobs in the hundreds of thousands, and is changing our economy in ways that we have no idea what the impacts are going to be, but we know they're going to be huge. And so my big objection to the way Mr. Carney is running things now is that I think he's a great prime minister for today, but we need to be talking about what's going to happen in a couple of years. We're seeing the world changed around us with Mr. Trump, Mr. Xi, and Mr. Putin. They would all be quite comfortable to divide the world into three parts and each have control of one of them. So when Mr. Carney went to Davos, I was like, okay, this is great. Middle powers, democracies working together. But then he goes and signs a deal with China, a country that literally has concentration camps with millions of Muslims in them and is, according to our own parliament, committing genocide. And for some reason, because they're big, we have to give them our money. I was talking with a diplomat from Taiwan last week, and she was saying, I don't get Canada. That you guys, on one hand, you're strongly supporting Ukraine, as we should. I've got my Ukraine pin on, keep it on until the day the war is done. But you guys are supporting Ukraine on the one hand, but then signing a deal with China. And China is the country that is giving all the money and support to Russia. So we're in the end, and it's kind of a shameful thing for us to say as Canadians, we're supporting both sides in this war. One side directly and proudly, but the other side through these cheap and grubby trade deals. And so my take on that is, why would we trade with a country that doesn't share our values, is out to get us, and is clearly much stronger than us right now? So it comes back to, I think, that alliance of democracies that Mr. Cardy talked about. So that's a super long answer to your question, so I apologize for that. But in the end, I think we need a voice for people who are strong believers in democracy, rule of law, freedom of speech, the best of what our system has been, both left and right, because the government does things that it can do better than the private sector, and the private sector does things better than government in some cases. This argument on the left and right, you've got to pick all government or all private sector, it's just stupid. We don't decide anything else in life that way. We pick what works. And we know that the government can run some things better than the private sector, and vice versa. So why wouldn't we use that as the basis for making decisions, rather than just ideologically saying in advance that, well, I think the government's going to do a better job of this, or I think that a business would do a better job. The answer is sometimes one does better, sometimes the other. That's just how life works, and that's how complexity exists. And I think if we had more politics that reflected the complexity of life, we'd be a little bit better off than following the you're completely wrong or I'm completely right. Left is good, right is good. That stuff's just nonsense. Real world doesn't work that way.
It's okay that you went a little long. I like the answer. But this is a speech to get to know you better. What is your favorite speech ever? Like, that's the question. What's your favorite speech ever given?
That I've heard from somebody else? Probably, it'd be hard for me. I'd have to pick between two, and they're both from British prime ministers. First would be Churchill's speech with their finest hour, when he talked about the defense of democracy and how the UK at that point was standing alone against Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and imperial Japan. And that was a moment which resonates even more now, when Canada is sitting on the top of the North American continent looking at an increasingly strangely aggressive southern neighbor and other threats around the world. And I think we can sometimes feel kind of alone. But so that speech has always been one that I thought just summed up the reasons why democracies always win in the end. That free people, given the power to use their creativity, they can beat anyone. You look at that with tiny little Ukraine next to enormous Russia, and the Ukrainians, even more successfully since the Americans stopped giving them help, have been showing the Russians what free people can do when they're facing people who are working for and fighting for an autocracy. So that speech was really important. But another one was Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, gave a speech in 1996 on education. And I happened to be in the UK at that point and was invited to go and listen to this speech. And the way he focused on education changed the rest of my life and led to me becoming education minister here in Brunswick. Because realizing how, unless you have a population that is being given the gifts of critical thinking, of literacy, you can't have a society, because there's no way to pass on the information from one generation to the next. And unless you get education right, really nothing else matters. And so that I took that message when I worked around the world, that I tried to, when I'm working on democracy building programs in countries like Nepal, I'll try and include literacy work with a lot of the young party activists or people who lived in rural areas, because I think unless you can read and write, you can be manipulated by politicians who show you an election platform, but you don't really know what's in it. A mortgage or a contract that you sign without knowing what you're really signing. You can be manipulated if you can't read. And to me, literacy is the greatest tool that democracies give their citizens, and we need to get back to taking them seriously. So that's no one has ever asked me that question before. So those would be my two most influential speeches so far, anyway.
Yeah.